Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, April 1st, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea reported 551 new COVID-19 cases Thursday, staying above the 500 mark for the second straight day. A new UN report suggests North Korea's missiles are becoming more agile and evasive. It also states the possibility of the missiles being nuclear-armed regardless of their range. And the IMF said global economic output is expected to be about 3% lower in 2024 than the amount it was forecasting before the COVID-19 pandemic. We start with the COVID-19 situation in South Korea. The nation reported 551 new COVID-19 cases on Thursday, staying above the 500 mark for the second straight day. Now, of those cases, 537 were local and 14 were from overseas. There were 4 more deaths, raising the death toll to 1,735. Now, as of today, a total of more than 876,000 people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, starting today, people aged 75 and older in South Korea will be receiving the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. About 3.5 million people are eligible for the shots, and they will be inoculated in 46 vaccination centers across the country. The government plans to supply 7 million Pfizer doses by June, including 1 million doses that arrived in the nation last week and on Wednesday. Also from today, anyone who experiences side effects will be able to take up to 2 days off from work. Side effects usually occur 10 to 12 hours after inoculation and disappear within about 48 hours. Despite reports of rare blood clots related to the vaccine, the EU says there's no evidence that supports the need to restrict the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine in any population. Our Pyeonji reports.
The EU has said there is, quote, no evidence to back up the need to restrict the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine in any population. The head of the European Medicines Agency said Wednesday local time that our Amsterdam-based agency is studying reports of new cases and will provide a further assessment next week.
The experts have advised us that they have not been able to identify specific risk factors, including age, gender, or previous medical history of clotting disorders for these very rare events. And as I mentioned previously, a causal link with the vaccine has not yet been proven.
Her remarks come after rising concerns over rare blood clots in people who got the shot, and as Germany restricted the use of the vaccine in people under 60. Meanwhile, Pfizer said Wednesday that its COVID-19 vaccine is 100% effective in a study of children aged 12 to 15. The company says among more than 2,000 participants, there were 18 confirmed infections observed in the placebo group, and no confirmed infections in the group that received the vaccine. Pfizer said the results show vaccine efficacy of 100% and added that the shot was also well tolerated, with side effects in adolescents generally consistent with those seen in adults. The Pfizer CEO said the company plans to submit the new vaccine data to the FDA as soon as possible. Over in Russia, about 1,000 people in Moscow have contracted COVID-19 after receiving their second shot of the vaccine. According to the Russian news agency, this is about 0.1% of those who have been fully vaccinated. More than 70% of those that were infected experienced mild or asymptomatic forms of the disease. Pyeonji, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund says global economic output is expected to be around 3% lower in 2024 than the projections it made before the pandemic. However, it says the medium-term impact won't be as severe as the global financial crisis. Lee Seung-jae with more details.
In a blog post on its updated World Economic Outlook Wednesday, the IMF said global economic output is expected to be about 3% lower in 2024 than the amount it was forecasting before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. That said, it stressed the pandemic's medium-term impact won't be as bad as the carnage caused by the global financial crisis of 2008-2009. Despite this, the IMF says prospects for scarring remain substantial even though systemic financial stress and prolonged damage have largely been mitigated due to the unprecedented measures taken. The IMF added the path to recovery remains challenging, especially for countries with limited fiscal resources. The IMF expects emerging markets and developing economies to be most impacted, with losses expected to be the most significant in low-income countries. It said economies more reliant on tourism or have a bigger share of high-contract sectors such as restaurants and retail trade will suffer more persistent losses. The impact of the pandemic could also leave a bigger shock on the labor market over the medium and longer term, as high-contact sectors may never fully recover. The IMF also warned that productivity could be negatively impacted by a decline in competition if dominant firms become even more entrenched and further increase their market power. The full World Economic Outlook and the IMF's updated growth projections will be released on April 6th. 이 승재, Arirang News.
A new UN report suggests North Korea's missiles are becoming more agile and evasive. It points out that the regime is continuing its ballistic missile capacity development, ignoring global sanctions. It also states the possibility for the missiles to be nuclear-armed regardless of their range. Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
The UN says North Korea is still developing its ballistic missile capacity, defying international sanctions. This is according to a report released Wednesday by the Sanctions Committee on North Korea under the UN Security Council. The experts noted that the North has unveiled mid to short-range ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and intercontinental ballistic missiles, signaling that all of them can be nuclear-armed regardless of their range. The assessment backs up Pyongyang's statement that it has successfully developed nuclear warheads small enough to fit atop short, mid, and long-range missiles. The experts also said the regime is shifting from liquid fuel to solid fuel ballistic missiles, enhancing maneuverability. Moreover, pointing to the expansion and modernization works at the regime's missile production facility in North Pyongan province, the report adds that movements have been spotted across numerous factories that make military equipment like missile launchers. The report cited a UN member state, which explained the regime is still operating its Yongbyon nuclear complex, adding that smoke and vapor containing uranium dioxide have been spotted. The experts also added that the regime seems to have resumed missile cooperation with Iran, exporting core parts to Tehran as recently as last year. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign minister is willing to hold talks with his Japanese counterpart anytime. But there's a number of thorny issues between the two sides, many rooted in history. When it comes to China, the top diplomat emphasized that South Korea doesn't need to choose between Washington and Beijing. Our foreign affairs correspondent Yoon Jang-min fills us in.
Seoul's chief diplomat Chung Eui-yong said he is willing to meet his Japanese counterpart at any time and in any manner, whether bilaterally or trilaterally with the U.S., amid icy Seoul-Tokyo ties over historical and other issues. Chung said during Wednesday's press briefing that the Korean government will sternly act on Japan's distortion of history and territory, but is ready for cooperation with Tokyo in other areas.
I will continue efforts for communication with Japan. Personally, I hope a South Korea-Japan foreign ministers meeting will be held early.
When it comes to any mediation by the U.S., Chung said Seoul will welcome any help from Washington, but basically, the two sides themselves should be working to resolve the issues. The foreign minister added that Seoul's foreign ministry has sent a senior diplomat in charge of Asia and Pacific affairs to Japan for talks at a higher working level. On the issue of South Korea's position between the U.S. and China, Chung said it is not a black and white choice, adding there are various areas for cooperation, including Korean Peninsula affairs, health issues, and tackling climate change.
Our basic stance is clear and never ambiguous. The South Korean government is firm that it will seek a harmonious South Korea-China relationship based on a strong South Korea-U.S. alliance. I say this repeatedly, that the U.S.-China issue is never our concern of choice. Neither the U.S. nor China has demanded that to us.
When the South Korean foreign minister sits down with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi this week, the two sides are to discuss Korean peninsula issues as well as bilateral issues, including a possible visit to Seoul by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Regarding North Korea's harsh criticism of the South Korean president for expressing concerns on the North's recent missile launches, the foreign minister said it is no help to the efforts for peace and security on the peninsula. While expressing regrets over Pyongyang's backlash, Seoul's foreign minister yet again urged North Korea to join the push for lasting peace on the Korean peninsula, as had been promised by the leaders of the two Koreas. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
As the civilian death toll continues to mount in Myanmar after the recent military coup, a UN envoy is warning that civil war is likely unless a solution is found fast. Our Choi Jung-yun reports.
An imminent bloodbath. That's how the UN envoy to Myanmar is describing the situation in the country, warning the risk of civil war is at an unprecedented scale. The official implored the UN Security Council to intervene using what she called potentially significant action. Her remarks came after the military launched airstrikes in Karen State for the first time in 20 years in retaliation for an earlier attack by ethnic Karen rebels. According to CNN on Tuesday, 6 people were killed and 11 were injured in the airstrikes. The Karen National Union, which controls an area in the southeast along the Thai border, seized a military base, killing 10 soldiers and detaining 8 others. The KNU says its actions were in response to appeals for help from opponents to the coup. Its armed faction is sending fighters to protect protesters while attacking Myanmar army positions and cutting off supply routes. With other armed groups vowing to join the protest movement if the military doesn't reverse course, fears of a return to armed ethnic conflict in the ethnically diverse nation has led to an exodus of foreigners. According to Reuters Wednesday, the U.S. government has ordered all non-emergency government officials and their families to leave Myanmar. Germany and Norway are urging their nationals to avoid protest sites and come home when they can. Workers are also bearing the brunt of the violence. As the bloodshed continues, one local worker at a South Korean franchise bank was shot in the head, but it's unclear if she died. It's also unclear if she was targeted because she worked at a foreign-owned bank. So far, more than 520 people have died since the military overthrew the government of democratically elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1st, halting Myanmar's decade-old experiment in democracy. Choi Jung-yun, Arirang News.
The deaths of delivery workers are becoming a serious social issue in South Korea. On average, they work 12 hours, 6 days a week. Now, that's around 2.2 times higher than the OECD average. Now, to solve this problem, logistics centers are using robots. Our Chang Tae-hyun reports.
Delivery services have become part of our daily lives. And to make this process faster and more cost-effective, delivery firms are turning to artificial intelligence. At this smart logistics center, there are no people carrying around boxes. Instead, robots do all the heavy lifting.
From when packages arrive to when they leave, the whole system is automated using robots.
This smart robot with a 3D camera attached can accurately move the parcels around. It can easily pick up small boxes as well and transfer them through the automated trail. When the boxes are moved upstairs, they're automatically inspected and are ready for delivery workers to take them away. Aside from moving boxes around, other types of robots can select products or even pack them in a box while making sure the right items go to the right places. This technology is not taking jobs away, but rather it's allowing people to focus more on important matters like delivering packages. People had to manually sort the parcels before going on a delivery, but with the help of these robots, it has reduced that burden. Another type of robot is being used at hospitals to automatically deliver medicine and other items.
Basically, they carry the item within the, from the pharmacy to the pediatric department. So they're carrying the medication or samples. So because it requires contactless services is tremendously increasing, right?
Factories are also becoming more automated. This gripper can carry heavy pieces of metal, and other robots will weld and paint. So these machines can make a whole car by themselves. Then the forklift will carry the product by checking the sensors on the top and reflectors installed around it. This will help check the real-time location and avoid obstacles. The Transport Ministry is planning to help companies build more smart logistics centers and is aiming to support the development of 50 centers this year. 장태현, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning. It's going to feel like the end of May this afternoon in Seoul, while regions in the east will notice highs that are a couple of degrees lower today due to easterly winds. So it's going to be windy and dry in the east, where many places are still under a dry weather advisory. But rain is in store on Jeju Island with 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation expected from this afternoon. Air quality will be decent across the country, but Chungcheongnam-do province could have high levels of ultrafine dust in the morning, while Gyeongsang-do and the east of Gangwon-do province could see dust levels rising later on in the day. More clouds will roll in this afternoon, while highs will be higher overall than the season norms nationwide today. Rain is in store this weekend, and it's going to be quite chilly on Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of today's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
As the weather warms and winter begins